Hi, good morning. My name is Solitaire Townsend. I am the co-founder and chief solutionist here at Futerra. Welcome to the opening session of Solutions House. Can I get a whoa? Okay. Thank you so much. We can't do that too often because the AV guys have told us we have to have a quiet room. I also really want to welcome everybody who's joining us online. Thank you for bearing with us. We know we're starting a couple of minutes late, but this is the first session. Now, we've come to Solutions House for the opening on Monday, and this is probably the only venue during most of Climate Week where climate change is still going to be the main topic of conversation in this room next Monday. Because this isn't an event space, you might have noticed. This is Futerra's offices. So actually, this is where our team works on sustainability solutions every single day. And this is a working space, and that's the energy we're going to try to keep for all of this week. This being a working space where in the room, on the panels, online, we actually focus on answers only, which is the theme of Solutions House. Now, as a working space, those of you online and in the room, you're going to hear pings from elevators, you might hear some workers going outside, and also you are going to meet Tagada. Now, Tagada is the most important person in the room. She is the Solutions House dog. Now, those of you who are online, I'm so sorry. We will try to get some sort of online presence for Tagada as well. But she has freedom of movement around this space because she comes in every day to the office. And so if you feel something rubbing against your ankles, it's either your neighbour or Tagada. So we have got a massive schedule of events here in Solutions House, and we've got some big themes that we're emerging. And I just want to run you through some of the themes, because I think there's some of the themes which are really important to what is going to happen overall in Climate Week, not just here in Solutions House. So we've got a big theme on storytelling, and actually how do we change the story of climate solutions. We've got a partnership session with the Hollywood Climate Summit. We've got a lot of sessions with creators, and on Wednesday we've got a Meet the YouTube Creators session. And in fact, this space behind me, if you can see it, is where we've got constant all week sessions going out live and online on YouTube. We've got some musicians coming in for a session on music. We've got some comedians coming in. So storytelling and the role of the storytelling industries is going to be a big part of this. Lifestyles, all of us, what we do. Does it matter? Can we make a difference? Is it just for the big organisations, or can we all make a change? So we've got a big session around lifestyles tomorrow. We've got more conversations about lifestyles on Wednesday. We've got work around product innovation and how that affects lifestyles. And again, the role of creators, social media creators, and helping us normalise a different way of living. We've got what I'm calling, and I haven't asked my partners whether they're okay with this, we've got what I'm calling what's next for net zero. Because net zero is not the end. Net zero isn't what we're shooting for. We're actually shooting for something better. And also net zero in terms of storytelling is terrible language. So we've got sessions on greening cash, on how we can actually activate and make these transitions. We've got sessions on digital solutions, unsurprisingly being as Google is a partner, on radical renewables, on scope 2, on scaling solutions, really digging into not just how do we achieve net zero, but how do we go beyond it. There's a lot of sessions about health happening here at Solutions House and well-being. We've got specific sessions around the intersection between health and sustainability. We've got a fantastic session on surviving sustainability. A lot of the people here in this room and online, this is your job, this is what you work in, and it ain't easy. And it's challenging and overwhelming, and it can be scary. And so we're going to be looking into not just how do we change the world, but how do we solutionists, that's a little plug for my book, how do we solutionists actually survive that and thrive as being change makers? And towards the end of the week, we've got some sessions on the inner development goals. And then we're also going to be celebrating and hosting new business models here at Solutions House. So tomorrow we've got a reception for the B Corp movement. On Friday we've got a big session with the Indian cooperative movement. We're really going to be making space for people who are thinking very, very differently about how capitalism works. And we curated all of this and we put it all together. And last year, the first year of Solutions House, we had 14 sessions. And this year, we have 32. We curated all of this because of the urgency of 2023. Because that the motto of Solutions House of answers only could not be more needed. Because people keep telling me we need less talk and more action. Where the hell do they think that action comes from if it's not from people like us gathering together and actually deciding and talking through what needs to happen? And so that's this space. I'm going to invite some of the Solutions House partners and a wonderful guest up here onto the stage right now. And we're going to have a bit of a chat about what we're hoping to see out of this week. And then we're going to come to you in the audience and to you online to ask questions, but also to share what you're hoping out of this week, not just here at Solutions House, but in Climate Week overall. Does that sound okay? Great. Has anyone seen where Tagada is? Right. Okay. Right. She's down there. Lucky you. There's going to be some competition about who gets Tagada on their lap. So I'm going to ask right now if Johan Falk, the co-founder and chief executive of the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, would come up and join me, and Kate Brandt, the chief sustainability officer of Google, and Leah Thomas, the founder of Intersectional Environmentalist. And you can give them a round of applause. Okay, I forgot since last year that we're on high chairs and I shouldn't have worn a skirt. Right, I'm going to try to sit very ladylike. So I just shared what some of my hopes for this week are and some of the themes that I see emerging from Solution House and elsewhere, and particularly for me the storytelling issue, the fact that we need to get out of this wonderful, amazing, warm bubble that we can generate during Climate Week and to wider audiences is crucial. But Johan, if I can come to you first, what are your big priorities? What do you want to see coming out of all of Climate Week?
From a general perspective, I think it's really important that if we should be able to cut emissions, what we said from the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, the carbon law, we need to cut emissions by 2030. We can't do that by just focus on cutting emissions. We need to focus on scaling up the solutions which basically shift out the fossil economy. So my hope is that we can really get the laser focus on the solutions and that we actually couple that with the economy as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Johan. I think you and I during this week are going to say, but maybe we should have bingo of how many times we say the word solution during the week. Yeah. I'm going for 5,000, I think. So, Kate, same question to you. What are you hoping out of this week of dedicated climate conversations?
Yes. Well, I think for me, we're having these conversations this week at a really important moment, right? We all just read the Global Stocktake report. We see we're not on track. We're coming out of the hottest summer on record. And so I think it makes it even more important that we are coming together this week across public and private sectors to keep emphasizing the solutions. And for me, coming here and representing Google, we think a lot about the role of information and innovation. How do we bring technology to the table to support policymakers, to support businesses, and to support individuals in driving action and getting us back on track? So I'm excited to have a lot of those conversations to share what we're bringing to the table in terms of technology, tools like our Data Commons or Environmental Insights Explorer, but also to get feedback about how do we do more, how do we support the acceleration of action.
Brilliant. And the role of technology is one of those few potential game changers we've still got left on the table. Exactly. And we need every game changer that we can right now. So Leah, this is you weren't able to make Climate Week last year. So this year, this is your Climate Week. What are you hoping to see coming out of all this thousands of discussions that will be had?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about climate communications, and I think a lot of people in this room know what's up when it comes to the state of the planet. And I'm really excited to expand climate communications beyond this beautiful movement. Being involved in some of the strikes for climate over the last couple of years, I've seen hundreds of thousands of people around the world get really fired up about climate action. And I think to take it further, we need to make sure that people who might not identify as environmentalists can feel welcome in this movement and in this space to see real change. So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about multicultural coalition building this week and how we can activate people who might not call themselves environmentalists, but to know that this movement requires all of us, regardless of if you're an accountant or an artist or whatever it is you might do.
Brilliant. Thank you. Actually, Leah, I'm just going to follow up with you for another question, because just beforehand, we were talking about the fact that intersectional solutions are so crucial. And yet, as the weather worsens and suddenly everyone's getting very focused on the science and the weather of climate change, that the necessary conversation about intersectionality isn't as growing and as big as it should be. It should be the central conversation. Are you seeing that? Or do you, what would you ask of people in this room in terms of making sure that the conversations they have this week are intersectional?
I'm definitely starting to see that a little bit more, with people understanding that climate justice is health justice and racial justice is climate justice. And we can't just talk about the carbon in the atmosphere without also talking about what's happening down on earth in real communities where people don't have access to clean air, clean water, or even healthy and fresh produce. So we're seeing that even places here. I'm so excited that there are going to be conversations about health and its connections to the environment. And that's what does get me really fired up about multicultural and intersectional organizing, because people in different fields can come together and expand this movement, and then we can see the change we want to see in the world.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Leah. And also, one of my personal objectives for this week is that in the first 10 minutes of every session, the words climate justice need to be said. And so thank you for making that happen. So when we think about that, when we think about the intersectionality between health, between justice, the fact that racial justice, that social justice is climate justice, and at the same time, in the global stock take, it looks like, you know, if we're hanging on to 1.5, it's by the skin of our teeth, and we're probably not, particularly with El Nino. When you look at that, what is the big solution, the one that keeps you up awake at night with excitement? What's the answers only, and of course there isn't a single one, but what is the answers only that you would put top of the list, be that a piece of technology, a lifestyle, a way of thinking, a way of organizing, a business model? What's the biggest solution for you, Johan?
It's difficult with one, as you said.
Yeah.
But I think we are on the verge of actually scaling up, renewable energy and electrification. We have passed the tipping points, and this is really important because I think that is an opportunity to actually break the fossil industry and break the dependence on the fossil economy. So that is really important, but we have many more solutions that we need to push over the tipping point, like plant-rich food, like energy efficiency, like cutting food waste, regenerative agriculture, sustainable forestry, and so on.
I said one.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely
I think
right.
the answer is yes.
The answer is all of it.
Exactly.
So you said there about the fossil fuel industry, and one of the
Yeah.
things I noticed yesterday in some of the conversations is the language is changing from a transition on fossil fuels to a phase out. And I'm a woman of words, and that matters because it's the never-ending transition. Like, transitions have no end dates, they are constant, whereas a phase out is an end. And I think that that's a terminology change that I've seen already here, which I could not be more enthusiastic about. Whoa, for everyone saying phase out. Kate, obviously, digital solutions is going to be a big answer, and you've already said that that's one of your big focuses. Is there an example of that, or a particular project or program that you think we should be focusing on?
Yes. So, in terms of the size of the opportunity for digital solutions, and there's some great research done by the World Economic Forum that says that roughly 20% of our ability to reach net zero by 2050 is going to come from digital technology. So there's a big opportunity space here. And one area in particular that, of course, we're thinking a lot about as a company right now is the role of AI. And we shared an announcement a couple of weeks ago with partners at Breakthrough Energy and American Airlines that I think for me really begins to get at what that opportunity of AI looks like. So in this case, we were focused on contrails. Those are those white plumes that you see behind planes in the sky. What the IPCC tells us is those are about 35% of the emissions associated with aviation are because of the radiative forcing caused by those contrails. And so we teamed up with these partners with Breakthrough Energy and American Airlines to use AI to help the pilots better route their planes, because contrails don't have to occur. It's all about the time of day that you're flying, what your route looks like. And through these tests that we ran with American, we found that we could actually reduce contrails by 54%. So that's like the scale of the opportunities that we have with AI through things like optimization. So that's one of the examples that I'm really excited about.
And what I love about that is that that's something that has to be done technically every single flight, all the time. It's just not something that could be done without AI. Unless you want to just strap 1,000 people to a desk and make them do it constantly. We need AI to be able to do that massive data crunch constantly every day for things such as that.
And when you think about a hard to abate sector like aviation, it's so good to know there's other solutions out there that we can lean upon.
Brilliant, thank you. And Leah, for yourself, when you are a social media influencer, a creator, you connect and hear from a lot of people online. What's the solution that's most central for you right now?
So follow me. I'm really just excited about education and changing curriculums because I feel like that will translate to policy. So I think what's getting me really excited is that there's so many educators in K through 12 and in universities that are updating their curriculums to talk about the environmental justice issues that are happening directly in their communities and getting students engaged in kind of small grassroots climate action. So I feel in some ways updating curriculums to make sure it includes environmental justice can be a climate solution, because then if people in K through 12 are learning about what's happening in their communities, volunteering, getting engaged, we'll see local solutions start to scale, whether that's developing more community gardens or planting more trees in areas like Detroit that need that carbon sequestration, but also because of the pollution and heat-related illnesses and all those sorts of things. So that's something that I'm trying to tackle, is whether it's utilizing social media or working directly with educators to update their curriculums. And it's happening really quickly. When I graduated in 2017 with an environmental science and policy degree, it wasn't mandatory for most schools across the United States. You could graduate with a degree in sustainability, never having heard the word environmental justice or climate justice. And that's why we have an entire sustainability profession of people who are questioning what social justice or health justice or whatever it is has to do with sustainability. So I feel like if we can tackle that, not just within the sustainability field and curriculums, and broaden it a little bit more, I'm so excited to see what solutions these young minds might propose and how they'll translate into policy.
Thank you so much, though, because I'm sitting here reflecting on the fact that I did my master's in sustainability back in the 1990s. And yes, I did have to look up what that meant in the 1990s, sustainable development, not as widely known as it is now. And of course, back then, it was almost all around the science of the environmental crisis. And it affected me for years in terms of my profession and what I did and how I worked. And that's not okay. And it took me a long time to myself work through the fact that the social crises and the environmental crises are the same thing. So that's a really great point, building that into how everyone studies on this subject. Now, the theme is answers only, but we're not blind to the problems. And I haven't checked the BBC this morning, but most mornings when I wake up and check, there is new news of another extreme weather event. And every morning I have to decide how much I'm going to bear witness versus how much I'm going to look after myself in terms of my ability, and whether I'm going to give it till 4 p.m. until I read about those horrors. And I've got no doubt there will be another one this morning, and if it hasn't made the headlines, it should have done, simply because there's so many of them now. They're not getting the focus that they do. So answers only means adaptation answers as well as mitigation answers. We have to talk about how we are going to protect the most vulnerable, so people are laughing because Taggart on their feet. So I was like, I'm talking about adaptation. It's not the funniest thing. And then I realised you were looking down. Just pat her when she comes past. She's French as well, so if she jumps up on you, just say no. Genuinely, she doesn't understand English. So when we think about answers only to adaptation, how are we, all 9 billion of us, going to make it through protecting the most vulnerable in the next 2 decades? What do you think works? What can we meaningfully do in order to adapt? And is there anything that's happening in adaptation that you want to really draw attention to this audience? I'm going to go the same way because it's easier for me to remember. I'm going to go to Johan first.
I think where there is an opportunity to really combine, the benefits in mitigation and also adaptation and resilience, that is powerful. So I'm really thinking about whatever we can do to protect nature is really a good way to create more resilience in our societies. So we basically need to get much more funding to protect nature and restore nature. So that would be my answer.
And here at Solutions House last year, you launched the Nature Roadmap, didn't you?
Yeah, that's correct. An exponential roadmap for natural climate solutions, where we basically need to scale up both protection, restoration, and more sustainable management of nature. So we need funding from government, from companies, and from individuals to protect nature, because that is really the insurance we have in the short term, which also gives us a lot of, some time at least, to scale up the solutions and phase out the fossil economy.
Brilliant. Thank you so very much. Kate, I know this is something, adaptation, that Google is doing a great deal of work on at the moment.
Yes, it's such a critical topic, and this is another place where we're seeing really powerful solutions that are enabled by AI. So one is around prediction. What we're now able to do is support earlier warnings. This is something we'll be hearing a lot about at the UN this week. This is a big priority for the Secretary General. We have been able to now use AI to do 7-day in advance prediction of riverine flooding. So that means that communities can get a week's notice if there's a high likelihood that there's going to be riverine flooding in their community. And flooding, as we know, impacts millions of people around the world. We started this work in India and Bangladesh several years ago because of that, but now we've been able to expand it to countries around the world so that we can give them those earlier warnings. And that's tools for policymakers, a tool called Flood Hub. We're also seeing aid organizations using this information to actually give aid in advance of a crisis, so people are more able to adapt. And also we're sending out warnings through our Google properties, through Google Search, through Google Maps, so people are getting those warning signals. And then, Leah, you were also talking about the challenges that cities are facing in adapting to climate change. And Johan, you also mentioned where we have some solutions that are going to be both kind of enabling resilience, but also all driving towards mitigation. And so we've done a lot of work with cities on, you mentioned tree planting. We've been able to use AI to assess aerial imagery of cities and give them a picture of all of the urban tree canopy that is in their cities. So this is now available for 350 cities around the world. And we've seen in Austin, for example, they use this data to plant more trees, especially in vulnerable communities, to create more shade. And the same thing with cool roofs. We've been doing work using AI to assess aerial imagery to give cities advice on where to implement cool roofs, which also can reduce the emissions of buildings. And we recently gave a $5 million grant to WRI, who's also doing a lot of deep work on cool roofs. So really, again, opportunities to seek solutions and to help those communities that are going to be the most vulnerable.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Leah?
I would say returning land to indigenous peoples is really important. And when it comes to nature-based climate solutions, a new kind of topic of conversation when it comes to Indigenous communities is protecting their intellectual property and making sure that we can reference them. So even when we're talking about regenerative organic agriculture, we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for Indigenous peoples and the ways that they protect the land. So that's something that I'll be advocating for and finding new avenues to protect their intellectual property to make sure that they're not forgotten about.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. In a minute, I'm going to come to questions from the in-house audience and from the online audience. And if you're online, it's going to magically pop up here for me. So please do, because nothing's popped up yet and I'm not sure if it's working. So ask a question and then I'll see them. So just before we go to questions or thoughts from the audience on answers only, I talked at the opening around how we, as individuals, as people who work in this full time, can sometimes struggle and be overwhelmed and be challenged. And in my book, I wrote a whole section on self-care, and I had to admit in that section on self-care that I don't do any of it and that I absolutely suck at self-care. But by interviewing all of these amazing solutionists, I learned a great deal about how I should be looking after my mental health, keeping standing up, making sure that I don't burn out or get overwhelmed. So I'm actually going to go the opposite way this way. So Leah, I know this is something that you've done a great deal of thought about in terms of how intersectional environmentalists can protect their well-being as we make this difference. We've got a week of like full-time work and no sleep and pushing ourselves. What are you going to give advice to people in this room to stay standing by Friday?
I would say understanding that we do everything in community, and it's not about individual action. And I know sometimes it's interesting. I'm pretty reserved and kind of shy, so having a social media platform is just funny to me, or that I speak for a living. But yeah, just thinking about it as a circle and community. It's not just about us saving the world alone. So even if you need to tap out for a second, that circle might get a little bit smaller, but it's still a really powerful circle. And then that's how you can show love to the people that you're coalition building with, to make sure and to encourage that they rest. And then, yeah, I'm not staying for all of Climate Week. I'm going to a Coldplay concert. And I'll be hiking in Seattle for a couple of days. And yeah, I just wanted to show up for the things that I really, really cared about, this being one of them, because I think the work that all of you all are doing is so, so important, and I can't wait to geek out with you later about all of the AI stuff.
Great.
But showing up for the things that I really, really care about, and really trying to be a support for other people in this movement, and yeah, going to Coldplay when you can.
Leah, I think I might need you to coach me, because you're a little younger than me and you've already so much better at boundary setting. Kate, you and I have had this conversation a few times before. As mum, as a leader, how do you make weeks like this cope so that you're not burnt out by the end of it?
Yeah, so I really appreciate your raising this, and I love this part of your book as well. And I think it is something we absolutely need to talk about, and I like your tips too. And I think for me, it is so much about being in nature, actually. That's the thing that really fills me up. So you say you're going to go hiking in Seattle. I have the great privilege of living in a beautiful place in the Redwoods in California. And for me, it's about getting outside and really staying connected to the beauty and the majesty of the planet, which is such a big part of the work that we do and why we want to preserve it for future generations. So I love to take that opportunity to really connect with nature, and that fills me up. And also being able to do that in community, being able to share with people, our homes. You were talking about incredible Indigenous knowledge. I think that's so important. But yeah, we need to talk about this because we're working on something that's really hard, and we need to take care of each other, and we need to take care of ourselves.
I was just reflecting on the fact that I probably write about trees a great deal more than spending time with them.
I like to go hug them, I really do.
We've got a park right outside. I'm going to get out there when it stops raining. Johan, you've been doing this work for such a long time. You've been leading an organisation. How do you stay standing? And also, I suspect Swedes are quite good at this. So I have my suspicion that Sweden might have the answers to how you set boundaries.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but we Well, the first thing, I think a lot of people are concerned about climate, so I would still prefer to take action to actually do something, because when you really feel bad is that you feel what's happening, you're not doing anything. So if we can get more people to actually be engaged and support each other, I think we need to also be more open, show our vulnerability and not try to stand strong every time. That is incredibly important, I think, to show our weaknesses. Connect with nature, I think that's so important as far as I see it. Music as well. I was also at the Coldplay concert, by the way.
I feel like I'm missing out. Like, how did you get the invitation to Coldplay? Thank you. And I think that all of you made the point around the fact that this is a community. We are community. Those of us who are here at Climate Week in New York, those of us who are online, like we're not on our own. And your point, Leah, that if you have to step out occasionally, the rest of us have got your back. Like, it's not all on your shoulders. It is on all of our shoulders, but it's not on yours alone. And that all of us together this week can support each other. And I promise you, by Thursday, I'm going to be asking you folks to pass coffee from the back down to this table, because I'm going to be struggling. So I'd love to open to questions from the room or brief points about what you're hoping to see from Climate Week this week. And then also, again, I haven't got any questions. Oh, I see questions coming in online, so I'll also make sure I go to those. Thank you. Hello, yes, please do say who you are and where you're from, if you feel comfortable doing so.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nancy Hirschberg. I'm from Hirschberg Strategic in New Hampshire. And this question's for Kate. So first of all, Kate, enormous thanks for everything you and Google are doing. It's really, thank you. You started off by talking about the need for us to scale up more, and one of the biggest levers, of course, is policy. And I just have to be honest that as much as I admire all the climate work you're doing on policy, Google and many of the tech companies have been really absent. And the Inflation Reduction Act and so forth, and you have so much power in Washington. Can you talk a little bit about how we, the public, can help support you in that work to leverage that? Thank you.
No, great to meet you, and thank you. And I don't know all of you, but I come from a public policy background. I spent the first part of my career in Washington working in the Obama administration. So this is something that's very personally important to me, but is also something that Google has worked on for many years. Yesterday we were over at the UN with UN Energy and SE for All talking about the 24/7 compact that we helped to found with them. This is an initiative that's focused on bringing together businesses and policymakers to unlock 24/7 carbon-free energy on grids around the world in support of SDG 7, in support of the tremendous need we have to not only develop technology, but also the policies that will enable us to drive towards a 24/7 carbon-free grid. So that's just one example, but that's a place where we've leaned in very heavily, but also supportive, the Paris Climate Agreement, supportive the Inflation Reduction Act, of the Green Deal in Europe. So absolutely, I think it's critical for companies to use their voice with policymakers and also to bring forward an affirmative message of what do we need. And so that's been a big focus for us with 24/7. We need permitting reform, we need investment in more clean energy solutions beyond wind and solar. So I completely agree with you, and it's something that's really important to me.
Johan, one of the things, Futerra joined the Exponential Roadmap as how we signed up to be a part of the Race to Zero. And one of the reasons why we were so excited doing that with Exponential Roadmap is in your 4 pillars, they're not all just about operational carbon or direct footprint. Your 4th pillar is about the responsibility to speak up on policy.
Yeah, that's right. Our framework, which all our companies are implementing, including Google and everyone else, is across these 4 pillars. So it's about cutting your own emissions, your value chain emissions, providing climate solutions, but also contributing, beyond your value chain. And that's very much about influencing policy and coming together to pushing what is required actually to scale up the solutions. So that's right.
Thank you. I wanted to give you the opportunity to push pillar 4. I love pillar 4.
Yeah.
So we've had a question come in online from Avantika Mater, and she's asked about the waste reduction and circular economy. Is that important to the climate movement? Like, are we just talking carbon, or are we talking stuff as well? And do we see any promise in the circular economy for creating climate solutions? I suspect the answer is going to be a resounding yes. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe if anyone's got any examples of where you can see the circular economy contributing to climate solutions. I can tease Kate's going to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'm happy to chime in as well.
We're actually just starting up a project around the action guide just for circularity, because the first halving, a lot of companies can do that with energy, moving to renewable energy, but to actually do the second and third halving, coming down to minus 90%, you have to go basically full circular. So a lot of the climate action has to be related to circularity, and it's much more than recycling. It's about the life length of the product, how long you can use it, and ensure that we move away from virgin materials to as far extent as possible recycled materials or zero fossil materials, but also rebuild our business models completely. So all companies working with physical items will have to take that route.
Yeah, love that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that exactly, circular economy is key in terms of climate solutions, whether that's things like device longevity. You mentioned that's something that is really important to us at Google. We actually just shared a few days ago, we've now extended the life of Chromebooks to 10 years. These kinds of policies are really important so we can use our devices for longer. But also thinking about, again, how can AI support us in the circular economy? One issue we know that's huge is that so much of the recycled material that could be recycled isn't getting recycled. And so we're looking at how do we implement a tool called Circular Net with MRFs, with municipal recycling facilities, to give them the ability to do better sortation through AI so that they can actually get those recyclables back into the value chain. So many other solutions, but those are a couple I'll mention.
I remember a conversation you and I had where we basically said waste is essentially a data problem.
Exactly.
It's like finding where it is, finding where it's got to go. Like it's an algorithm that needs to be solved.
Exactly.
Leah, in the work that you do, particularly in terms of how people online are seeing climate, is it climate, circular, nature, or people seeing this as sort of one problem that needs an intersectional solution? I think I already answered that question.
Yeah, I think one way I see this kind of coming up in the environmental justice space is internationally, and the ways in which the United States oftentimes, unfortunately, sends their waste to the global south. So I'm really excited to see, I haven't seen a lot of solutions for this issue, but how we can be better stewards in the United States and responsible for our waste to ensure that people in the global south aren't, filtering through a lot of technological waste. I won't name any companies in particular, but that's something that I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about. But not an issue that I'm super well versed in, but I'm seeing a lot of people talk about how, like, the intersections of waste and social justice and environment a lot more.
Brilliant, thank you. And please.
And just one thing I would add, speaking of kind of what are we seeing online, Sully, as you know, we love to look at Google search trends to get a pulse on what is on people's minds. And one of the trends that we've seen really accelerate over the last 5 years is this recyclable, that signal that people want to do the right thing, but they need that better information. So again, back to waste as a data problem, but that's a noteworthy trend spike that we've seen.
What I love about looking at Google Trends is there's what people say in surveys, and then there's what they search for on Google Trends, and I feel that the Google Trends data is probably much more reflective of what we actually think and what we're actually interested in and what we say in surveys. So thank you for that question, Avantika. Another question from inside the room.
Hi, I'm Karima Huda. I'm from Earth. We're a regenerative leadership and ESG advisory firm. Johan, thanks for talking about how businesses need to retool everything they do in order to produce in the future. Just following on from that, for all three of you, how do you think leaders need to retool how they behave and how they act, and how do organizations need to retool themselves to be able to generate a regenerative future?
Great leadership. Okay.
I'd like to start.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I love your question, and I think what I think about a lot is I've had the opportunity to work on sustainability and climate inside of large organizations. At the White House, the Department of Defense, now at Google, and what I've seen is you need leaders to lead from the front and to really set an affirmative vision and to put goals forward that are time bound, that are measurable, that enable the organization to focus towards a concrete outcome. And then you need the people within that organization to advocate for it, and also to really think about, like Leah, you touched on something that I feel really strongly about. Everyone can bring sustainability into their work, whether they're an accountant or an artist or a storyteller. We need everyone to think about, okay, now that we've set a bold vision, what's my role in that? And also challenging, could we be moving more quickly? Could we be doing this differently? I think those are the two ingredients you need. You need the whole community to come together, and you need that leadership from the front.
Yeah. Johan?
I think we definitely need climate and nature in the articles of association, in the shareholders agreement from the top in the companies. That is the next step. Yeah. That's important. We need to bring it into the vision and the mission statement of every company, as far as I see it. And also, I think we're moving from this CSR topic, where it's driven from only the CSR side, but we need every leader on the C-level, from purchasing, from business development, from strategy, to become climate leaders. And we need to set targets not only to cut emissions, but set targets to actually grow solutions as well, which are on the same level as financial key performance indicators. So these are a couple of things we think are important, and we'll try to push through our community of companies.
Love those specifics. Thank you. Leah?
I would say one of the best things that corporations can do for the environment, in addition to, of course, improving their supply chain and making sure materials are as sustainable as possible, is actually participating in wealth redistribution to grassroots environmental organizations. And I work with a lot of larger tech companies, and it's kind of funny because they'll have these amazing strategies on what they can do for the climate. And one of the best things that they can do is actually just transfer a little bit of their wealth to grassroots environmental organizations that really need it. Because I honestly believe even sending $50,000 grants to smaller grassroots organizations will see the change that we need, like more trees planted, community gardens, so many incredible climate solutions that just need that incubation period. So I would say leaders should be an advocate for wealth redistribution or resource redistribution in whatever way possible to really empower the organizations that already have the solutions in their communities, and they just need amplification and resources to scale their impact.
Brilliant. I'm going to feed in here on a slightly perhaps different approach than what's been said. So I do a lot of sessions for boards. I call it sex ed for sustainability. Everything you ever wanted to know about sustainability, but were too afraid to ask your CSO. And the CSOs aren't.
I didn't know that you did this.
I don't know that. Yeah, the CSOs aren't allowed in the room. It's just me and the boards, and we have this conversation of going, okay, do you actually know what net zero is? Like, what do you think 1.5 is? Do you think it's crap when your team says that people will pay more for this? And we have really honest questions. And in those sessions, I've been really confronted with where a lot of leaders are on this. So I've had leaders who actually didn't know what net zero meant. I've had one CEO finally work out what 1.5 was and be outraged and saying, what, so you mean winning is losing just a little bit? I'm like, yeah, like 1.5 is us losing just a little bit. And they are amazing people, and they are leading huge organizations, and they have not grown up with these issues. They are coming across them quite late career. And I'm not saying it's impossible to take on this challenge late career, but leadership does not just come from those who are wearing the leader hat. It can come from every part of society. It can come online, it can come from youth groups, it can come from people who were out on the streets yesterday, that the old hierarchies are not necessarily exactly what they were, that you can be an online creator with a much, much, much bigger voice and following than a CEO has. So whilst I definitely have high expectations of the leaders that we have now, I also really look for leadership elsewhere and not just from those who are currently sitting there.
And I just wanted to add something to that for me just further reinforces the huge importance of the youth climate movement and of young people talking to their parents, talking to their families. I can't tell you how many senior leaders that I work with have come to me in the last several years and said, okay, my kid is talking about climate every day at the dinner table. Kate, what do I need to do? Basically, like, put me in. Yeah. It is so powerful, and I've had that conversation so many times, and for me, that just completely reinforces we need young people to keep using their voices, to keep speaking up, and it's making such a huge difference.
100% agree. We often, people talk about the youth climate movement a lot as being leaders, and of course going, it's not fair. It's not all on their shoulders. It's on the shoulders of the people who are here. But their parents are a different matter. So thank you for that. All right, we've now got lots of questions coming on in line. Hooray! So great question came in from Diana Plaska. What's the solution or the answer that you hope is going to have come to fruition, actually happened by when we're sitting on this stage next year? I think that's a great question. Like, we've got a year, and a year counts in climate, a week counts in climate. Where do you hope we are by this time next year? And like, maybe don't think too much about the realpolitik. Like, actually, if we were truly on track, what would have happened by this time next year? Leah, you're leaning forward.
I think something that gets me really excited is a lot of people don't realize we really are in an environmental justice renaissance that's happening right now, especially when it comes to federal policy. So even if you're looking at the EPA, there's over 100, it might actually be up to $1 billion, but I don't want to say the wrong number, but there's over $100 million in grants specifically for environmental justice organizations. We're seeing a council for environmental justice in the White House. We're seeing so many amazing changes. So when I talk about wealth redistribution to grassroots environmental organizations, it's happening. So a year from now, I can't wait to see all the reports of them implementing their local environmental justice solutions. So I think we're going to be in a really cool place next year. And I say that because I want you all to know that people have been advocating for environmental justice since the 80s and beyond, and right now is the time. We are in essentially like the Earth Day movement for environmental justice. So I want you all to keep your heads up, keep fighting, figure out who those local environmental justice orgs are in your communities, because I think this time next year, we'll see a lot of really incredible solutions that they're building.
Brilliant, thank you. Woo! Sorry, AV guys. Kate.
I just wanted to share one thing to build on that, and then I have a second one as well. But I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, I got the chance to sit on this very stage last year with some of the original environmental justice leaders, like Dr. Bullard. And you're absolutely right. It was so incredible to sit with the leaders of this movement who are so generous in this moment of renaissance, and all they want to do is teach and accelerate. And so the small thing that we're doing at Google in support of that is an environmental justice data fund. So we have a grant making program through google.org. It's a $9 million fund to give grants to environmental justice organizations from both these original leaders like Dr. Bullard, but many, many others, so they can continue to unlock environmental justice solutions in their communities at the grassroots through data. So I'm excited to share with you some of the solutions coming out of that. Maybe we can talk about that on the stage next year. And then, so the other thing I was going to mention is, you know, in our world, in the tech community, there's been a lot of focus on large language models, on LLMs. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how do we make this a force for positive change, again, in the climate movement. And we have our first really good example of this that we just launched last week. It's this tool called Data Commons. It's the world's largest knowledge graph. It has 200 public data sets and more coming. And it now has a large language model interface. So something that was still a pretty technical tool is now available to anyone. It enables you to look at data across agricultural data, census, poverty, health, climate. And so this is our first example of really making LLMs a powerful solution in the climate and sustainability movement, but I am excited next year to come and talk about how we've done a lot more of that.
Brilliant, thank you. Johan.
To connect to that, Kate, I think the challenge we have is that we're not scaling solutions sufficiently fast, and now I think it's really the time to use AI digitalization to really push the curves to the left. to use all the power of digitalization and artificial intelligence and language models. I think that is possible, but it's also about climate action. We're looking at how can we actually accelerate, how we analyze companies, how we can provide advice to companies, how we can generate action guides and these type of things. And AI can all be applied to that to really crush the times in terms of climate action. And another thing to mention is what I really hope for is, so far at the COPs, and we have a COP coming up now in 2 months, is that there is a competition between countries to do as little as possible because no one really like to focus on the down curves. What we really care is always about the up curves. So if we can actually turn race to zero, which I love the movement, by the way, to a race to the top, the race to the top. So we get companies, we get countries to really compete about winning the new economy, the new solutions economy. That I think can take it.
Brilliant.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll say I would really hope that this time next year, when I sit in all these focus groups and do all these surveys, that our fellow humans can say as much about climate solutions as they can about the climate problem. We've actually in many ways won a lot of the argument around climate change. Climate change is now communicating itself. We actually don't, you can look out of your window and see climate change. But the public, the rest of us, don't know what the solutions are beyond wind turbines and recycling. So I really hope this time next year that millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people know what we should be doing about it, not just that it's scary. Folks, we're actually at time, which feels nuts. I feel like we should be able to have at least another 2 hours. And I suspect there's 100 more questions. And of course, literally they're all coming in online now in the last 2 minutes. Thank you so, so, so much for being our first audience here at Solutions House. I think it's gone okay. Yeah. It was a bit distracting when Tagada came and walked up here. Those of you online might have seen us all looking down. I thought she might come and join us up on stage. Please do join us online all through this week. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, productive and impactful week here at Climate Week. Thank you so much.